Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I like that. That was pretty good there, Marshall Lambeth. We're going to be talking about economic freedom and the decline of it. I, too, see a bad moon rising. And we've got Dr. Robert Lawson, who I believe you've been on the show a few times before. I think we get you on now like once a year to talk about how bad everything's going. How are you, Robert?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I think we could probably just replay last year's interview because the news is about the same.
Yeah, I would maybe argue a little worse, don't you think?
Yeah, it is a little bit worse. I mean, in terms of the rankings we put out last year when we talked, the United States was ranked 12th. This year we're down to 16th. Seems like every year it's down another notch or two.
He is with SMU. He's an economist there, and we're always delighted to have him on, even though he always makes me more depressed than I was before. It's pretty interesting how you do that. We also have a great article over there at usdailyreview.com that I want to encourage the listener to check out. Talk a little bit, first of all, about the survey and how long you guys have been doing it. It's a survey about global economic freedom and how various countries rank. It's done in conjunctions with several institutions. Talk a little bit, give us an overview of the survey itself, who's involved, that type of thing.
Sure thing, yeah. So the Fraser Institute in Canada started a project about 20 years ago to try to rank countries or rate countries for how economically free they are, and I got involved as a young graduate student and still doing it. And what we do is we collect data, everything from tax rates to inflation rates to tariff rates to also some survey numbers that we get from other organizations like the World Economic Forum on property rights, rule of law, different types of business regulations, how long it takes to start a business. So we have 42 variables we throw into the computer. We've got 7 countries, and it's a kind of a sausage factory. I won't bore you with the methodological details, but at the end of the day, 0 to 10 numbers come out, and higher numbers like Hong Kong gets a 9 out of 10, and the lower your number, like Venezuela is dead last in our index. I think they have a 3.2 out of 10. So basically, you get a bunch of numbers telling you how free you are.
Yeah. There you go. And how does Venezuela rank bottom when there's countries like North Korea on the map?
Yeah, North Korea is not in my study. Neither is Cuba. I have little doubt where they go, but that's one of the things that we're pretty much scholars here. I'm a professor. My co-authors Jim Gortney and Josh Hall are professors, and we like to use real data. So, needless to say, the World Economic Forum doesn't get to give its businessman survey in Havana or North Korea.
So at least Venezuela is free enough to let people come in and show people how unfree they are.
Yeah, it's not so bad yet that they can't at least collect the data.
Yeah, well, that's nice of them. That's very thoughtful of them. By the way, do you mean as in Gortney and Strout when you say James Gortney?
Sure, yeah. Jim Gortney and I have been involved. We were the original 2 co-authors of this index. He's my mentor.
Wow, Gortney and Strout. I was so fortunate where I went to college, Abilene Christian University. My first economics textbook was Gortney and Strout's classic, which is essentially a first-year public choice economics book.
It's a wonderful book. I think it's in 15 or 16 editions now.
It's incredible book. And it's like, and my professor unfortunately didn't agree with with them. He was a typical, liberal economist, typical Keynesian, and so he had problems with the text. The chairman of the department was very free market, and so that's how it ended up being in there. But I could read, and I learned a lot. I learned an incredible amount. I'm trying to think about what's the title of that book? Do you know?
It's called Economics, Private and Public Choice.
That's it. Yeah, there you go. And you know how many books I had to read through college, but that's one of the few I actually remembered. What a great partner to work with, and one of the great advocates, and I'd say even architects of public choice economics, as advocated by Dr. James Buchanan. He's a thought leader, and so phenomenal. Talk a little bit about where the U.S. is compared to last year.
Well, it's a little bit lower, as you noted, and the rankings are always going up and down, in part because other countries, but in just a numerical sense, we've gone down another tenth of a point. It's a 10-point index, so a tenth of a point is pretty real. Let me just give you one example. I was just looking at some of the numbers this morning, preparing for this, and we have one piece of information. It comes from the World Economic Forum, which is this, the Davos World Economic Forum. It's a very mainstream group, and they have a survey question that they use, and it asked people in the United States, all over the world actually, have you ever had to do an extra payment, or have you ever encountered favoritism in government, government actions? And, in the year 2000, that score was an 8.8. Well, that's pretty good on a 10-point scale. Now it's a 6.2. And if you think about what's happened to make that number go from 8.8 to 6.2, well, I can think about plenty of government favoritism going on.
Are you talking about in this country?
Yeah.
What?
You got Solyndra, you've got Chrysler and Ford bailout, or GM bailouts. Sorry, Ford didn't get bailed out. You've got, Tesla. You've got all these special deals going in, wind subsidies. So the favoritism and the cronyism, I think, is being picked up by these numbers.
That's incredible. That's a huge number. And I've long known that cronyism is a cornerstone of America's capitalistic system, which kind of is oxymoronic if you think about it. Cronyism is antithetical to capitalism, and certainly to economic freedom. But I didn't realize it's gotten that bad in this country.
Well, what you don't want to do is look at other countries that score around that level. I mean, countries like Uganda, African countries you don't want to be compared to, things like that. We've gone down in almost every area.
How do we rank in that respect? How are we in terms of countries where there's clearly payments being required to get things done that are beyond the realm of the law? Well, where do we rank in that list?
Yeah, we still score pretty good on that. There's not a lot of outright bribery, of government officials. Although, at least compared to most countries, it's pretty clean here. I think this has more to do with the lobbying and the special deals and the political favoritism associated with. I don't think it's campaign finance. I'm not a big campaign finance nut, but it's clear now that in order to do business in the United States, you've got to play ball with politicians in state capitals and in Washington. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do that, you're really at a competitive disadvantage, and that's what I think is being picked up.
By the way, if you go to usdatareview.com, you'll see the article that we have here by Dr. Lawson. Excellent article. You can't miss it. And I want to encourage you to check it out. When you look at the article, you're going to see in there a link, and I want you to hit that link because it will go straight to the study, and you'll see how countries rank. Interesting to see certain countries out there. Switzerland's always been in the top 5. I was shocked that they finally ended up having a minimum wage recently. Were you?
Yeah, that's happening to a few countries now. Sometimes it's almost symbolic that they do that. Hong Kong now has a minimum wage.
Yeah, I saw that too. Last couple of years, right?
Really small. I think it's only $2 an hour, so it's meaningless even in Hong Kong. But it is kind of a warning shot, though, that the Hong Kong economy may be slipping. But so far, they're still solidly number one.
Yeah, and when you say that, it's not the robustness of the economy, but the economic system you're alluding to.
Yes, absolutely,
yeah. And so it's almost like we can afford the $2, but it really is a matter of principle, isn't it? To me, when you start advocating minimum wage, you're actually claiming that works. That's the biggest problem with minimum wage.
It's just really bad economics.
Yeah. Yeah, but even a little amount that's below what anyone's getting paid is making a statement that you believe that this works. And to me, that's the fundamental problem is when countries do that. And so I was disappointed to see Switzerland and Hong Kong, both bastions of economic freedoms, both ranked in the top 5, concede to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things you got to realize is there's no country on earth, even Hong Kong, that's going to live up to my standard or your standard probably. But so this is necessarily all relative. But even with that, what's disturbing is, like, again, going back to the U.S., is we were right there with Hong Kong a decade ago, mm-hmm. and now we're down there we're below Canada, we're below the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, so we've really lost a lot.
Yeah, we are ranked 16, and I think the last time we had you on, we were around 14. Does that sound about right?
I think it was 12 last year.
12, man. That's incredible, Robert. So, and where were we, say, 10 years ago?
10 years ago, we were second behind Hong Kong.
That flushing sound you hear, it's incredible, and it's only moving more and more in that direction, and it's very sad to see. And, I don't know. It seems like there's so much momentum towards collectivism in this country, towards command economy, that it almost doesn't matter who gets elected. It's going to be hard to reverse much of what's been done, and it seems like the momentum is still to move more and more in that direction. The Republicans are no longer a party that really stands in contrast to a collectivist worldview. In my opinion, they may never have really been that other than in a short period in the 1980s. But they're clearly collaborators with those on the other side of the aisle who are stronger advocates of socialism. It's just a question of the pace, not whether or not we do it.
Yeah, that really was the theme of the article I wrote for you all. I mean, that this is not about red and blue politics. I mean, in fact, I think both the left and the right in America should be really upset about these declines. I mean, we're seeing things that should make the right mad. What makes the right mad? Well, higher taxes, we have that. Higher regulations in business, we have that. But the left should be upset as well. When you look at the kind of outrageousness that goes on when it comes to asset forfeiture, which tends to disproportionately affect minority populations in this country. I mean, this decline in economic freedom has been an equal opportunity offender. It's hitting low-income minorities and immigrant groups and things like that just as much as it's hitting the big, rich, fat cats.
Yeah, eminent domain issues, everything, banking, the banking industry, the banking regulations have taken the lowest income groups that had only recently figured out how to be able to do conventional banking off of that chart.
Exactly.
I mean, it's incredible what they've done. And to me, I think, I'm a little conspiratorial-minded. I think it's designed to keep them poor because that's a built-in permanent constituency for a certain political party.
In my weak moments, I tend to agree with you on that.
I mean, it just seems fairly obvious to me. Only one, both parties are messed up. I totally agree with you. I'd probably be a full-fledged libertarian if they had an electoral chance, but obviously they don't. In fact, I think libertarians would wonder what they did wrong if they actually won anything. They're such purists. But there's only one party that clearly cannot survive without poor people. There's only one party. And therefore, they have every incentive to have as many people impoverished as humanly possible. And, of course, as many rich people to fund the political campaigns in order to keep them. And I believe that the only ones who can really afford socialist policies are the mega poor and the mega rich.
Well, I will say this. We need a voice, a mainstream voice for economic freedom in this country. And it used to be the Republican Party in the 80s for sure.
Yeah.
And we've lost that. If you watch these debates, there is no voice up there, maybe Rand Paul a little bit, but there is no voice in the mainstream Republican Party right now who is advocating for the kind of Reagan-esque policies that used to be, the standard.
Yeah.
And now you've got both sides of the aisle, basically saying, okay, we want to put the gas down on more regulations and more taxes, and the other says, well, we want to do it more too. We're gonna, who's going to drive this car faster over the cliff? Seems to be the debate right now.
By the way, are you an Austrian?
I lean that way. I'm not really a technically trained one, but
is anyone? They're kind of an independent group, and they would probably debate among themselves who is the most technically trained. You sure sound like one, and as a result, I always enjoy having you on the program, Dr. Robert Lawson. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yep, he's from SMU. Go to usdatareview.com. He'll be featured there today. Make sure you check him out and check out that great article. See where we're going, and maybe you ought to apply some influence as a listener on these politicians to get us moving in a different direction. I'm Kevin Price. This is The Price of Business.